Hey there, how you doing? It's Miguel, and welcome to my new um, video blogging experiment. My vlogging experiment. I've got a camera set up. I should be now sort of not streaming, but recording in 1080p and 30 frames a second. That's pretty awesome. I have the capability of recording in 60 frames per second, which is pretty amazing. And so I just got my camera in yesterday, and I got my lights in the day before, and I get my microphone is coming in tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to upgrading my equipment and your experience as well as my experience. And so it's really exciting. I'm really excited about what's coming up in the future in terms of upgrading what's going on and what you're seeing and what I'm seeing. And I don't know, I'm just filled with this hope, and I'm filled with this excitement and really just gratitude about the technology existing and that I have access to it. And yeah, I'm so hopeful that things are gonna work out. And man, I'm just blown away by it. I'm really curious to see what is showing up on the screen. And I wonder what it's like to record in 1080p. You know? Let's see. So in a way, I still gotta calm down a little bit. I'm just so excited. My brain's going really fast, and I don't know. What an interesting setup. I think I just want to sit here and experience. Oh, the technology. You know, what's kind of funny is I have a real interest in technology. I call myself a gadgeteer, and I think that's correct. I really enjoy using electronic technology, and I kind of have a knack for it. You know, I've been using electronic technology since I was a little kid. I mean, when did I get my first electronic device? I think it might have been like a Sony Walkman a long time ago. I would say back when I was maybe 10 years old. And maybe even before that, I think I remember having a VIC-20 that was provided by my Uncle John. And maybe that was around 12 years old. And I remember Dad buying a Macintosh 128K computer, and I was fascinated by it. And so by the age of 10 years old or about, I've just been enthusiastic about computers and digital technology and communications and anything related to electronics. You know, I'm 47 now, so I've basically been working with technology for 37 years. And so pleased to see the transitions of technology as it improves over time. I think one of the most striking changes in technology had to do with cellular telephones. You know, I remember when I was maybe about 24, 25, 26 years old. I had a car, and I bought my first car phone, which was a big deal back then. And essentially, and it was so expensive. You know, the car phone service, mobile communications was just getting off the ground. And prior to, say, a car phone setup, there was just land-based phones, landlines. And that's all there was. Maybe I think there were probably beepers at the time. But there was no technology where you could talk on the phone to someone else. from a distance that was not connected to a landline. And I got that, and I pretty much decided to use it only for emergencies. And guess what? I never had an emergency, so I never really had to use it. And then real cellular telephones came out, and that was amazing. And we had basically these dumb phones, these candy bar phones, for a long time, many years. And I really enjoyed using my candy bar phone. There was another transition that was just remarkable, and it took me by surprise. For the longest time, dumb phones were transitioning to smartphones, and it took a while. And there were a lot of devices that were sort of in between the dumb phone and smartphone. And I got some Microsoft phone some phone with a Microsoft operating system. And it was so basic, so rudimentary. And then, boom, the smartphones arrived. After I paid $400 for this middling dumb phone. And I just was blown away by this technology here, this cell phone technology. This is amazing. I'm still blown away by it. Like, it's been a good, 7-8 years after it's made its way to market, and I'm just still blown away by it. Yeah, so, it's funny how we're often waiting for technology to develop. There's a point at which we all see in the world that some kind of technology is feasible, and we also see the market drivers for it in advance, but it takes time for that technology to develop and unfold and then make it to the market. Even when it's clear the technology is inevitable. In fact, something that comes to mind is autonomous vehicles. Yeah. Autonomous vehicle technology is going to revolutionize the landscape. It's going to change the world. And I'm really looking forward to it. Right now, in 2018, I'm only aware of a few areas of the country that are covered with autonomous vehicles, some kind of autonomous vehicle program. For example, I think one of them is Phoenix, Arizona, and another is, say, Mountain View, California, next to the Google headquarters. I'm sure there are others all around the world and in the United States, but they just don't come to mind right now. And I'm really looking forward to autonomous vehicle technology. I can really see all kinds of changes in the offing relating to these autonomous cars. It's going to be such a great... When this technology arrives, it's going to just change the equation on so many things going on in our world. A few examples. I think what's going to happen is that autonomous vehicles, instead of people owning their own cars, I think what's going to happen is that people are going to buy subscriptions for transportation to get from point A to point B with some transportation company, whether it's Google or Lyft or whatever, and or Uber. And so we're going to buy these subscriptions where electric vehicles are going to transport us from point A to point B when we call them with our smartphone device. And that's going to make car ownership essentially obsolete. And that's wonderful because owning a car is really expensive. If you think about all the maintenance and licensing and insurance, it is quite a burden on the pocketbook and the brain to make sure everything works right, because cars have so many parts and pieces. So I'll be happy to offload all that responsibility onto a third party, onto Uber. I'll be grateful to do that. And not only that, but I'll also be able to delegate all the driving responsibility to a third party. Driving your car and being in this position for hours and hours on end, holding the steering wheel and manipulating the acceleration and the brake, that takes a lot of mental energy. And it's not always very exciting. It's all about avoiding obstacles. And then there's this time aspect where things are, you want to make progress on your trip. It's such a hassle. It's such an emotional challenge. And there's so much at stake because at any moment you could die. It's so risky. Everyone's in their car doing the same thing. It's a real challenge, and it is. I will be really happy when I don't have to do that, when I can just delegate all of those decisions to AI and feel confident that the AI is going to do as well or a better job than I would do. So that's going to come as a huge relief to lots of people. And so yeah, getting rid of all these artifacts related to owning cars and driving them, oh man, that's going to be wonderful. So I'm looking forward to that. And that's going to come along with it some repercussions. Right now, everyone who owns a car, which is pretty much everyone in the United States, when the car breaks down, we take that car to a mechanic, an auto mechanic. Now, when these big companies like Google and Uber start sort of renting out their cars or using a subscription service, people are not going to be just dropping off their car at the local auto mechanic. These cars are going to drive to their own stations, their Uber-owned mechanic shops, where Uber is going to maintain their own vehicles according to their own standards, of course. And so there's going to be this huge consolidation of auto mechanics. Auto mechanics used to be spread all over the country, and now I think they're going to be aggregated in, maybe there might be, 10 central locations for auto mechanics to do their work in the state of California. There might just be 10. There might be less than 10. There might just be 5. And so that's going to be phenomenal. That kind of, basically, it's going to mean that the whole industry of fixing a car is going to be completely changed. And there will probably be a whole lot fewer auto mechanics. Yeah. And I bet you cars are going to start being maintained by robots. So yeah, that's an industry that's probably on the way out. Of course, there will always be a need for auto mechanics because there will be people who hang on to their cars and want to do their own maintenance. That'll be forever true. So, and let's see what else will change. Fueling is going to change. A lot of these vehicles, they're going to be transitioning to electric vehicles because electric vehicles last longer. They are just more reliable than gas. That's just a fact. And so these electric vehicles, they're all going to be running on battery power, and they're probably all going to have their charging stations, and they're going to go to their charging stations autonomously. There will be, in the future, no need for gas stations. And this is like the very near future. I'm talking 5-10 years from now, gas stations will be obsolete. So right now, in the United States, there's a gas station on basically every street corner. And in fact, there might be 2 or 3 gas stations on every street corner. There are so many gas stations in cities. And there is a time that I can see when gas stations, there won't be any gas stations. I'm serious. Now there might be convenience stations where people, like little grocery stores like 7-Elevens, where people get supplies and stuff. But there will not be places that dispense gasoline or petroleum fuel. I know, it's crazy. That is going to be, imagine, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be amazing. And then, not only that, but the parking situation. A good part of every city, maybe 50% of every city, the sidewalks, the asphalt, there are parking spaces. Parking spaces. There's a lot of space for parking. When autonomous vehicles begin to show up, there will be no need for parking spaces. There will be need for like temporary areas where people park for 10 minutes at a time, but there will be no need for parking spaces because these vehicles will show up out of nowhere, and then they'll wait for you to load your stuff and you into them, and then they'll drive away. That will be the extent of the parking. And there's not going to be any cars just sitting around on the curb or in a parking lot somewhere. There'll be nothing like that. So it's going to free up a lot of space. There's going to be like no need for parking anytime. And that's going to be huge because today there's parking spaces all over the place and there are parking structures. There are basically buildings that exist merely to park vehicles. Multi-story buildings and underground buildings. And imagine all of that being unnecessary, like within the next 5-10 years. Well, certainly in about 10 years. I mean, amazing. So these changes are going to just be so disruptive. And then there's more. I mean, if that wasn't enough, you'd think, oh, was that all? No, there's more. There's always more. And another thing that's going to change is that people who are elderly or disabled, right now, I have friends who can't drive when it gets too dark because their vision is not good enough in the darkness. Or maybe I also have friends who are basically too sick to drive. They've got problems. Maybe they black out. Maybe they have seizures. So they can't drive anymore. And there are elderly people who can't drive just because they're too frail to drive. They just can't get out the house. They can get out of the house, but they can't drive a car reliably or safely. So they lose their driver's license. All these autonomous vehicles, that'll make all that unnecessary. These older folks and disabled folks will be able to drive, to go places that they've never been before. They'll be able to, it'll widen the experiences of so many elderly and disabled folks. It's going to be wonderful. They're going to regain their freedom. They're going to have the ability to go on vacations. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, it's going to be such a good thing for elderly and disabled. Yeah, and people who say are afraid of driving. There are a lot of people who've been traumatized by driving because of all the accidents that have happened. When a person gets into a car accident, it's a traumatic experience. And I think a lot of people might get, say, anxiety disorders like PTSD or other related disorders because driving is so stressful and crashing is so stressful. There are tens of thousands of people every day who lose their lives in car accidents. Imagine that going away. I mean, it's just amazing how just the whole landscape of our world's going to change. People will be able to commute from further distances away. Now, a long commute between home and work is approximately an hour. That people have longer commutes than that. That's for sure. A lot of them, I would say, average around 2 hours for a commute. That's for a longish commute. And I'm sure there are people who have longer commutes than even that, which is mind-boggling. But autonomous vehicles will change that whole equation. People will be able to, because you're able to be productive inside of your car. It's almost as if being inside of your car could be another workspace. It's possible. You've got your computer, you might have a printer or a fax machine, or not a fax machine, but some kind of, I don't know, your telephone, of course. I don't know, you could be just at work in your car. Or you could watch a movie, say, well, or take a nap as you're being transported from home to work. So people are going to be able to live further away from their workplaces than ever before because of the rise of autonomous vehicles. A 4-hour commute may not be that big a deal if you're able to work half the time or all of the time. Yeah, so that's pretty awesome. Let's see. I mean, there's really no end to the changes that autonomous vehicles will bring. And it's so exciting to know that we're on the cusp of this new technology. And I can just imagine all the relief that'll happen all around the world when it does. It might be a way to begin to curb climate change. It might be the most serious market-driven way to combat climate change. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I'm really happy about that happening. Oh, you know what? So today is the 5th, right? Or no, it's the 6th of September. And I figured that I might as well do this peaceful living excerpt. Let's get this started. So September 6th, right? All right. So Peaceful Living is a book by Mary McKenzie. And let's see what she has to say about September 6th. Mere survival is an affliction. What is of interest is life, and the direction of that life. Guy Fregault. So let me say that quote again. Mere survival is an affliction. What is of interest is life, and the direction of that life. Okay. So, yeah, I think this quote talks about how, ideally life would be enjoyable and a challenge and an adventure. An adventure in transformation. Yeah. And just surviving, like just eating food, water, and having shelter is, he calls it an affliction. That sounds rather strong. But I think in general, the quote is just saying there's more to life than simply survival. And that's true. Now, a lot of life is just survival. And, it's survival, though, with certain standards, right? So let's see what Mary McKenzie has to say about this quote. She says, loving life. I spent much of my first 35 years just getting by. Okay, I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration, Mary. Just getting by for 35 years. Okay. I didn't feel much joy. I didn't have many friends. I didn't feel passion. I just got through each day. In essence, I spent my life reacting to my perception of other people's feelings and needs, rather than being in touch with my own. Now I understand that what is interesting about being alive is living. If I'm just getting by, unaware of what I feel or need, I do not fully experience life. It is the difference between living life in black and white and experiencing full color. Why just get by when you can experience living color? Be aware, be vibrant. This is your life. Make it work for you. And here's a quote, an affirmation. She says, commit to living today in full awareness of what you feel and need in each moment. Wow. That's pretty phenomenal. Commit to living today in full awareness of what you feel and need in each moment. Well, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do this. Being fully aware of what I need and feel in each moment. Wow, that's a really tall order. Let's be clear. I am not that good. I'm not always clear about how I'm feeling about something or about what I'm needing. The fact is that brains are parallel processors, and depending on what perspective you take in any moment, you'll have a whole different set of feelings and a whole different set of needs. From one perspective, you might feel and think one way, and from another perspective, you might feel and think another. And your mind, your attention, is always bouncing between perspectives. So there's all these layers and levels. And there are subtle levels, and there are more pronounced levels. You might be feeling anger. That might be your number one emotion. But then in the background, there's sadness and even a little joy at the same time. It's life is like a rainbow. We are all sort of simultaneously feeling and thinking different things. Life is complex that way. Actually, our brain is complex. Every thought we have is connected to every other thought in our mind. And as our attention goes from thought to thought, click, 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 we are being exposed to new perspectives and new ideas. It's really not easy to be absolutely aware of your feelings or needs in the moment, in every moment. I would say that the feat is impossible. Now, I think what we can do is sort of get a sense of our moods over time, right? We can, estimate where we are or what we're feeling about one subject or another subject. And, I think that's about as good as it gets. I'm saying this as a person who owns a brain, who has a mind, and has attempted to know what I'm feeling and thinking. So there's that. Well, anyway, I've really enjoyed our time together, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm also happy about my new electronic setup, my new camera, my lighting. I've got my microphone coming in tomorrow. Things are really coming together. I've got my backgrounds. So one of these days I'm going to think less about the technical aspects of my setup and more about actually producing content to spread out over the internet and all over Mindspace and into your life, Emily. So, let me say that I love you. I cherish you. I love you just the way you are. There's no need to change. And I'm just so grateful to have this time with you. And thank you. Peace.